Good evening and welcome to tonight's presentation From the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore. Much has been written concerning various aspects of Royal Arch Masonry and its furnishings. Personally, I am interested in the four principal banners, and the object of this short address is to stimulate thought and interest into their origin. Their origin is connected with the remote past handed down in Hebrew folklore. We, in this present age, who would not consider anything of historical value unless it was in writing, are often credulous in regard to folklore and oral tradition. The four principal banners which we place on either side of the dais were the standards of the host of Israel. At every encampment, the tabernacle was erected in the centre of the square. In the book of Numbers we have recorded the order in which the Israelites were to march and keep their position when halted. The art of laying out an encampment appears to have been well understood in Egypt long before the departure of the Israelites from that country, and it was there, doubtless, that Moses became acquainted with that mode of encampment which he introduced among the Israelites. The plan was as follows. On the east side, the tribe of Judah would lead. Their banner was the lion. They were to be supported by the tribe of Issachar and the tribe of Zebulun. On the south side shall be the camp of Reuben, with their banner of a man. They were to be supported by the tribe of Simeon and the tribe of Gad. On the west side shall be the standard of the camp of Ephraim, an ox, and by him shall be the tribe of Manasseh, and then the tribe of Benjamin. The standard of the camp of Dan, an eagle, shall be on the north side. The tribe of Asher and the tribe of Naphtali would support Dan. Each division had its separate standard, and each family had a separate standard about which it was to pitch its tents. The tabernacle occupied the centre of the camp, following the common practice in the east of the prince or leader of the tribe in the centre of the others. It should be borne in mind that Jehovah, whose tent was the tabernacle, was the leader of Israel. The tents nearest to the tabernacle were those of the Levites, whose business it was to watch it. In the 49th chapter of Genesis, we have recorded Jacob's dying message and blessing to his sons. Our ensigns give us a reputation of the prophetic utterance and blessing to each son. Judah, a lion; Issachar, an ass burdened; Zebulun, a ship; Reuben, a man erect; Simeon, a tower or a sword; Gad, a troop of horsemen; Ephraim, an ox; Manasseh, a fruitful vine; Benjamin, a wolf; Dan, an eagle with a serpent in its talons; Asher, a cup or flourishing tree; Naphtali, a hind let loose. As to the suggestion of why our banners are not placed in their original positions, the lion in the east, the man in the south, the ox in the west, and the eagle in the north, I can only reply that the ritual stations them as on the dais. It might also be remembered that the New Testament Gospels are theologically classified as Matthew the ox, Mark the lion, Luke the man, and John the eagle. The question which now confronts us is, what is the significance and origin of these four chief banners? Let us now see the position of these divisional banners: south a man, east a lion, west an ox, north an eagle. When we turn to the first chapter of Ezekiel, we have a description of the cherubim. Verse 10 reads, "As for the likeness of their faces, they four had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they four had the face of an ox on the left side, and they four also had the face of an eagle." Is this coincidence, or has tradition been remembered? So, what do we know about the cherubim? 1. Late Jewish Angelology. In the composite system of Jewish angelology, the cherubim form one of the 10 highest classes of angels, while another class is distinguished by the synonymous term of living creatures. These two classes together with the Ophanim, or wheels, are especially attached to the throne of the divine glory, and it is the function of the cherubim to be the bearers of the throne on its progress through the worlds. The Jewish liturgy, like the Te Deum, delights to associate the praises of Israel with those offered to God by the different classes of angels, and singles out for special mention in portion of the daily morning service the Ophanim, the Haoth, and the Seraphim. We find an approach to this conception in the Apocalypse, where the 4 beasts or horses, though, like the 24 elders, they are always mentioned apart from the angels and discharge some altogether peculiar functions, are yet associated with the angels in the utterance of doxologies. The difference between the 4 beasts of Revelation and those of Ezekiel, both as to their appearance and to their functions, are obvious, but without the latter, how could the former have been imagined? A similar view is suggested in the similitudes in Enoch, in one passage of which the cherubim, seraphim, the Ophanim, and all the angels of power are combined under the phrase, the host of God, and unite in the ascription of the blessedness of the Lord of Spirits, while in another, the 4 faces on the 4 sides of the Lord of Spirits, reminiscent of the Ezekiel, are identified or confounded with the archangels. Everywhere, however, a somewhat different view is presented of the cherubim. They are the sleepless guardians of the throne of his glory. They are the fiery cherubim, and together with the seraphim, exceptionally called serpents, are closely connected with paradise and placed under the archangel Gabriel. From these facts, we gather that in the last 2 centuries BC, there were different ways of conceiving the cherubim. 2. Scripture mention. Cherubim are mentioned, A, at the expulsion of our first parents from Eden in Genesis 3 verse 24, when their office was to keep the way of the tree of life, i.e., to render it impossible for man to return to paradise and eat of the tree of life. In this account, there is no mention of their nature or form. B. We next read of them in connection with the furnishing of the tabernacle, in Exodus 25 verse 18, where directions were given to place the 2 golden cherubim on the top of the Ark of the Covenant. They were to be of beaten work, i.e., beaten with the hammer and rounded and not solid. They were fastened to the mercy seat, the lid of the ark, and, facing each other, stretched out their wings so as to form a screen over the mercy seat. They were called the cherubim of glory. Cherubim were also woven into or embroidered upon the inward curtain of the tabernacle and the veil. C. The 2 cherubim placed by Solomon in the Holy of Holies in 1 Kings 6 verse 23 were made of olive wood overlaid with gold. They had bodies 10 cubits high and stood upon their feet like men. The length of their wings was 5 cubits. They stood with their faces inwards, i.e., towards the holy place, the outward wing of each cherub touching the wall, and the tip of the other wing touching each other. D. Other references are as follows. He rode upon a cherub and did fly, 2 Samuel 22:11 and Psalm 18:10. The vision of 4 cherubim, or living creatures seen by Ezekiel, in Ezekiel 1 verse 5 to 10, and that of the 4 beasts, or living creatures, in Revelation 4:61. 3. Form. From the above descriptions and references, it is impossible to arrive at certainty respecting various particulars of the cherubim, and it is difficult to say whether this silence may have arisen from the fact that these figures were familiar to the Israelites, or whether it was intended to leave the matter in indefiniteness. A line of similarity runs throughout the whole Bible with regard to them, with slight modifications in their structure, due, perhaps, to the fact that the idea they were intended to express had become clearer as time ran on. Turning to the cherubim of Solomon, we find that they stood upon their feet. 2 Chronicles 3 verse 13, thus leading us to believe that they had a human and not a bestial form. This is confirmed by reading the accounts in Ezekiel, who says, "This was their appearance, they had the likeness of a man, and there appeared in the cherubim the form of a man's hand under their wings." Of the 4 living creatures mentioned in the Apocalypse, it is said that the third had a face as a man, seeming to imply that the human figure was characteristic of them all, but that it, in addition to the figure, also had the face of a man. Whatever else, therefore, may have been associated with them, this much is clear, that the human element predominated in their form. But they are marked by characteristics taken from other spheres of creaturely existence. Thus, alike in the tabernacle, in the temple, and in the visions of Ezekiel and St. John, they had wings. In Ezekiel and the Apocalypse, they are said to have had not only the face of a man, but the face of a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Ezekiel speaks of them as in possession of all 4 faces. St. John apportions one only of the 4 to each, while in the case of the cherubim, both of the temple and the tabernacle, no intimation is given that they possess more than one face, in all probability the human. Perhaps, however, the animal faces were latent in the cherubim of the tabernacle and capable of development. 4. Cherubim and the throne. An important question relative to the cherubim has reference to their position as regards the throne of God. Are they the bearers of that throne, or simply near it? Some Old Testament expressions appear to favour the former theory. Thus we read, "Thou sittest upon the cherubim, shine forth," in Psalms 80 verse 1, and "He sitteth enthroned upon the cherubim, and the earth is moved," in Psalm 99 verse 1. It may be questioned, however, whether the phrase "enthroned upon the cherubim" is not simply a condensed expression for seated on the throne which is guarded by the cherubim. Both in the Psalter and in the narrative books, it is the heavenly throne of Yahweh which is meant, the throne from which he rules the universe and guides the destiny of the nations. These and similar passages must be taken figuratively, for in the book of Moses, it is the mercy seat that is God's throne. These figures appear to have been suggested by the position of the cherubim upon the Ark of the Covenant, and to suggest the idea of close proximity to the throne of Jehovah in service and in worship. 5. Meaning. It is evident that they do not represent attributes of the Almighty, for this would be in direct contradiction to the commandment, "Thou shalt not make any likeness of anything," etc., in Exodus 20 verse 4. Again, they are represented as worshipping, and have ascribed to them creaturely position and ministerial character. The 3 leading theories of this are the mythical, real, and symbolical. The mythical theory. According to the mythical theory, the cherubim was an imitation of the Egyptian Sphinx, or of those composite animal forms belonging to Central Asia, and to be met with, above all, upon the Assyrian and Babylonian monuments. 2. The real theory. This theory takes the cherubim to be supermundane spiritual essences, spiritual beings of a higher order than the angels. In support of this theory, it is argued that God would not have placed symbols of the pure creation of the Hebrew fancy at the gate of paradise. The comparison made between the king of Tyre and a cherub in Ezekiel 28 verse 14 is thought to be intelligible only on the assumption that the prophet conceived of the cherub as a supermundane spiritual being. Again, in the vision of Revelation chapter 4, the 4 beasts or living creatures are not animal existences representing material creation or the animal kingdom, but spiritual beings that surround the throne of God. Symbolical theory. Those holding this theory believe that the cherubim are symbolical figures, ideal conceptions, which have no corresponding representatives among actual living things. The important question then is, what do they represent? Dr. J. Strong says, "We venture to expound them as cosmical emblems of the divine attributes, or as modern science, somewhat atheistically we fear, styles them, the laws of nature. They are the creative and providential functions of God, exercised in behalf of his human subjects. The four faces are the main index of their typical significance. The human devotes intelligence, the leonine strength, the bovine perseverance, and the aquiline rapidity, so that we have the complete picture of an omniscient, omnipotent, uniform, and ubiquitous maintenance and superintendence of the eternal fortunes and affairs of the body of true worshippers, i.e., the Church of all time. Dr. Milligan says, "Thus, therefore, we reach the meaning and purport of the cherubim. They are an emblem of man, associated on the one hand with the inanimate and on the other with animated creation, all brought into the immediate presence of God, all placed close around his throne, and either filling or stretching forth to fill the most holy of holies with their presence." Fairbairn concludes thus: "They, the cherubim, were ideal representatives of humanity in the highest and holiest places, representative not of what it actually is, but what it was destined to become, when the purpose of God in its behalf is accomplished. God manifested as dwelling between the cherubim is God appearing in a state of blessed nearness to men, etc. Perhaps, as has been suggested, they are sometimes spoken of as mythical and at other times as real. In striving to show that the banners of the Holy Royal Arch had their origin in the oral tradition relating to the cherubim, those guardians of paradise and messengers of God, I trust that the significance of the banners may have a far deeper meaning than at first appears, and that others will be stirred into seeking for underlying truths in many of our Masonic emblems. For more Masonic podcasts, videos, music, texts, and artwork, visit fromthequarries.com or subscribe to our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook accounts by searching From the Quarries.